everybody, to our January 2013.
Brand new year.
I know, teaching on mercy this month. It sounds weird. You know, it always takes me until like March before I can write the right year on my checks and everything else. So we'll see how long it takes me this year. But anyway, I am incredibly excited about this year for a multitude of reasons. But I'm incredibly excited about our teaching videos this year. We have just a really exciting theme, and I really just get this sense that God is ready to do something very, very exciting in our local chapters. And he already has been doing some very, very exciting things. But in my prayer journal, in the middle of last year, I had written this phrase, and I said, God, let our LeadHer chapters be the catalyst for radical application of the truth in the lives of women worldwide.
I love that.
And I have gone over that, and I've gone over that, and I've come back to that, and I've prayed that, and I really feel like this beginning of a new year, this start of a new theme, is really his answer in that prayer that I've been praying for so long, that our chapters are really going to become this place where women come and they get challenged, not just to, oh, okay, that sounds great, but to radically apply the basics.
And not just to get challenged, but to be taught how to apply them. Because it's one thing, you know, to be convicted about something and go, okay, I know I need to do that, but I don't have any idea where to start. And I think that's one of the things that really excites me about this whole year's worth and the theme this year is we're not only going to challenge you, but we're going to tell you how to apply this in a radical way that looks different from, I would dare to say, anything you've ever heard before.
I agree. So this year, what we're going to be talking about is the wardrobe of a LeadHer. What is it that we need to wear as women? What is it that God calls us to put on every single day so that we can be the kind of LeadHer that he wants us to be? And so we're basing this entire year's teaching around one passage. And this passage is found in Colossians chapter 3, verses 12 through 17. And I'm going to read it from the New Living Translation. It says, since God chose you to be the holy people that he loves, you must clothe yourselves with tender-hearted mercy, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Make allowance for each other's faults and forgive anyone who offends you. Remember that the Lord forgave you, so you must forgive others. Above all, clothe yourselves with love, which binds us together in perfect harmony. And let the peace that comes from Christ rule in your hearts. For as members of one body, we are called to live in peace and always be thankful. Let the message about Christ and its richness fill your lives. Teach and counsel each other with all the wisdom that he gives. Sing songs and hymns and spiritual songs to God with thankful hearts. And whatever you do or say, do it as a representative of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks through him to God the Father.
That's a tall order to fill.
It's a huge order, and it's a big passage. And so it's going to take us an entire year to dissect this passage, you know, chunk by chunk by chunk, and really talk about not only what it means to wear that wardrobe, but what each individual piece really looks like and what it really represents. We're going to start this month. We're going to be talking about mercy, tender-hearted mercy, and what that really looks like. And you and I have had some great discussion about this. I'm really excited to share some of the things that we've learned. But, you know, I want to point out, before we really dig in and start this, you and I have some things hanging back here, and we're going to be adding to this as the year goes on. But I think what this really represents and what I want you to understand is it doesn't matter what your uniform is every day. It doesn't matter if you're wearing overalls or, you know, you've got a military uniform, or you're just wearing, you know, just everyday clothes, you're wearing a business suit, or you've got a service uniform. It doesn't matter what your vocation has called you to wear. God's wardrobe, you can accessorize any of this with these things that we're going to be talking about. And you can accessorize anything that you do, you wear, with these different individual LeadHer wardrobe pieces. And you can radically wear them and really start a whole new style for yourself, but a trend, hopefully, you know, as we kind of talk about that fashion carry through.
I noticed that none of those things are fuzzy pajamas or sweatpants. So I think so many of us as Christians would really rather God said, it's okay, you can lay around in your pajamas on the couch and just come see me once a week. So this is just really exciting that, the things God's calling us to do are challenging, but as we challenge you, we're challenging ourselves to put on these things also and to walk in them radically, which just means a way that you've never experienced before.
Well, I looked up the word radical before we began recording, and I love this definition. It actually says it is drastic reform.
Oh.
So we want to drastically reform the way that you, that I, and that every single one of you are interacting with this piece of scripture and are applying it to your lives and are wearing and carrying yourselves on a day-to-day basis. Okay,
It's a big
so we are
challenge.
digging into mercy. And we're going to start in kind of a strange place. Unexpected place. As I was really kind of digging into the Word and praying and asking God what did He want us to share on each of these different things. When it came to mercy, He really led me to a passage that I never really viewed as a passage about mercy before. So when I sent this passage to Sarah, I'm sure you were like, what?
We're going where?
We're going where? And so I'm going to ask you if you'll read this passage for us. We're going to actually
Sure.
dig into the entire chapter of Exodus 16. So
Sure, absolutely. I'm reading out of the NIV 1984 version. The whole Israelite community set out from Elim and came to the desert of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after they had come out of Egypt. In the desert, the whole community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. The Israelites said to them, "If only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. There we sat around pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted. But you brought us out into this desert to starve this entire assembly to death." Then the Lord said to Moses, "I will rain down bread from heaven for you. The people are to go out each day and gather enough for that day. In this way I will test them and see whether they will follow my instructions. On the 6th day they are to prepare what they bring in, and that is to be twice as much as they gather on the other days." So Moses and Aaron said to all the Israelites, "In the evening you will know that it was the Lord who brought you out of Egypt, and in the morning you will see the glory of the Lord, because he has heard your grumbling against him. Who are we that you should grumble against us?" Moses also said, "You will know that it was the Lord when he gives you meat to eat in the evening and all the bread you want in the morning, because he has heard your grumbling against him. Who are we? You are not grumbling against us, but against the Lord." Then Moses told Aaron, "Say to the entire Israelite community, 'Come before the Lord, for he has heard your grumbling.'" While Aaron was speaking to the whole Israelite community, they looked toward the desert, and there was the glory of the Lord appearing in the cloud. And the Lord said to Moses, "I have heard the grumbling of the Israelites. Tell them, at twilight you will eat meat, and in the morning you will be filled with bread. Then you will know that I am the Lord your God." That evening quail came and covered the camp, and in the morning there was a layer of dew around the camp. When the dew was gone, thin flakes like frost on the ground appeared on the desert floor. When the Israelites saw it, they said to each other, "What is it?" For they did not know what it was. Moses said to them, "It is the bread the Lord has given you to eat. This is what the Lord has commanded. Each one is to gather as much as he needs. Take an omer for each person you have in your tent." The Israelites did as they were told. Some gathered much, and some little. And when they measured it by the omer, he who gathered much did not have too much, and he who gathered little did not have too little. Each one gathered as much as he needed. Then Moses said to them, "No one is to keep any of it until morning." However, some of them paid no attention to Moses, and they kept part of it until morning. But it was full of maggots and began to smell, so Moses was angry with them. I'm sure that was lovely.
Mm-hmm.
Each morning everyone gathered as much as he needed, and when the sun grew hot, it melted away. On the 6th day they gathered twice as much, 2 omers for each person. And the leaders of the community came and reported this to Moses. He said to them, "This is what the Lord commanded. Tomorrow is to be a day of rest, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. So bake what you want to bake and boil what you want to boil. Save whatever is left and keep it until morning." So they saved it until morning as Moses commanded, and it did not stink or get maggots in it. "Eat it today," Moses said, "because today is a Sabbath to the Lord. You will not find any of it on the ground today. 6 days you are to gather it, but on the 7th day, the Sabbath, there will not be any." Nevertheless, some of the people went out on the 7th day to gather it, but found none. Then the Lord said to Moses, "How long will you refuse to keep my commands and my instructions? Bear in mind the Lord has given you the Sabbath. That is why on the 6th day he gives you bread for 2 days. Everyone is to stay where he is on the seventh day. No one is to go out." So the people rested on the seventh day. The people of Israel called the bread manna. It was white like coriander seed and tasted like wafers made with honey. Moses said, "This is what the Lord has commanded. Take an omer of manna and keep it for the generations to come, so they can see the bread I gave you to eat in the desert when I brought you out of Egypt." So Moses said to Aaron, "Take a jar and put an omer of manna in it, then place it before the Lord to be kept for the generations to come." As the Lord commanded Moses, Aaron put the manna in front of the testimony that it might be kept. The Israelites ate manna 40 years until they came to a land that was settled. They ate manna until they reached the border of Canaan. An omer is 1/10 of an ephah.
So let's establish a little bit of background here to this chapter. This is Exodus chapter 16. Okay, if we go back just 2 chapters to Exodus 14, what's happening?
The big deliverance from Egypt. They're
Right.
set free. God acts in a mighty way to deliver them from the Pharaoh and from their slavery in Egypt.
Right, so we're parting the Red Sea. We are, we're riding out in victory.
There's been all the plagues.
Exactly. So Exodus 14 is this incredible victory. And then we get to Exodus 15. And the entire chapter of Exodus 15 is the children of Israel singing praises to God.
Right. Yeah.
In fact, I'm going to pull out a couple of verses here. Then Moses and the people of Israel sang this song to the Lord. "I will sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. He has hurled both the rider and the horse into the sea. The Lord is my strength and my song. He has given me victory. This is my God, and I will praise him. My Father's God, and I will exalt him. With your unfailing love, you lead the people you have redeemed. In your might, you guide them to your sacred home." So they're giving him praise. They're giving him glory. And then, 1 chapter later, and in fact, historians believe it was exactly a month later, between Exodus 15 and Exodus 16, that everything changed.
My, how quickly we forget.
Everything changed. In fact, it cracks me up every time I read this story. Verses 1 and 3 that you just read, they're essentially saying, "Why didn't you just kill us? Why didn't you just let us die? How have you brought us out here to starve?"
And these are the same people that were complaining to Moses when he
Yes.
first came and told them that God had sent him to deliver them. And remember, Pharaoh made it harder on him?
Yeah.
And they were complaining about how hard it was and how long they had suffered, and God hadn't heard their cry. And these same people, like you said, a month after being delivered, and not only were they delivered, they plundered all of Egypt when they left.
Right.
They left with gold and jewels and fine clothes and all kinds of things. I mean, they were to ask their neighbors, and everybody gave them whatever they wanted. So they marched out not as freed slaves, but as victors over this entire nation.
Right.
And like you said, this whole chapter of singing praises. And then, as soon as they're not getting what they're used to eat, how quickly they start grumbling.
That's right. And so, as parents, can you just imagine? Because I know myself, it's like Christmas morning, and you've given of yourself and you've given everything you can, and then an hour later, well, I didn't get this, I didn't get that, and they immediately start complaining, and you just want to be like,
You just want to choke them.
"Are you kidding?" Hey, wait a second.
Exactly.
Let's be grateful for what we just experienced, what we just had. Can't we focus on this? But no, how quickly that turns. But that wasn't God's response.
No, thank goodness.
God did not turn his wrath on them. God did not yell and scream and say, "Are you kidding me?" What did he do?
He showed them mercy. He fed them.
He showed them mercy. And the more I come back and I read this story, the more that I think there's so much for you and I and every single one of our members to learn from God's reaction in this moment. He chose mercy over vengeance, and he chose mercy over frustration, and he chose mercy over anger. And oftentimes when you and I are faced with the same choice,
We don't make such a good choice.
we don't always make the right choice. That's exactly right.
And it's not like God just did this once. God shows mercy over and over and over and over. I mean, this story just instantly reminds me of when Jesus rode into Jerusalem, and the same crowd that was shouting his praises and laying their cloaks down and waving the palm branches and screaming his name. Just a few days later, it was the same crowd that was screaming for his blood.
Yeah.
But again, he showed mercy. He could have said, "All right, you ungrateful brats, forget it, you're on your own."
Yeah.
But instead, he went to the cross.
You know, I have shared before from a book that I read recently, Lead Like Jesus. I love that book. And there's this great quote in there that says, "We show our love for Jesus by extending love and mercy to those that he brings across our path every day." And I read that, and I thought, yeah, because people do. They come across our path every day, and we need to show them mercy. But then I read this story again, and you and I have really had an interesting discussion. And I now have a new outlook on that, because it's the people that he brings across our path each day. And I think it's the people that he brings across our path repetitively each day. To me, mercy, it's foundational. We have to grasp this. You have to really begin to understand this concept of mercy, and you have to be able to show it to those that are closest to you.
And those are so oftentimes the people that we do the poorest job of showing mercy and kindness to.
Exactly.
We'll have our game face on when we're out at church or when we're at work or when we're in the community, and when we come home and it's just like, I'm spent, I don't have anything left, leave me alone, I don't want to hear it. You know, if you're not dying, I don't need to know, just leave me alone. And yet, you know, those are the people that we are called to love and honor and serve first before we take that out into the wider community and the church.
Right, exactly. And, you know, we are commanded in the New Testament. This is crucial.
Mm-hmm.
This is important. In fact, do you have James chapter 2, verse 13?
Mm-hmm.
Tell us what that says.
There will be no mercy for those who have not shown mercy to others. But if you have been merciful, God will be merciful when he judges you.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Big time ouch. I mean, that's a huge accountability check for us right there. I think, you know, James is in the book of James, we're being told, if you don't show mercy, don't expect mercy.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is no option, ladies. This is a skill. This is a garment that we have got to learn to put on every single day.
And there's no plan B.
There's not.
There's no option. Well, I don't feel like being merciful. I'll be this instead.
That's right. And so, you know, as we were talking about, well, what do you compare this to, you know, in terms of a garment? I think that honestly, mercy becomes foundational garments. You know, we can't necessarily hang them all up here or wear them while we're talking, because, I mean, I think it's the stuff we wear under our clothes every day. You've got to put mercy on first.
That's underwear, by the way, in case you didn't catch the foundational garment comment.
Yes. So anyway, but, you know, I think that you've got to have that on every single day, no matter what you put on top of it. But it has to be foundational. It has to come first. Mercy is crucial.
Mm-hmm. And you know, mercy, just like underwear, has to be changed or refreshed every day. And I love, you know, even God has to change his underwear. Lamentations 3:22 through 24 says, because of the Lord's great love, we're not consumed, for his compassions or mercy never fail. They are new every morning. Mm-hmm. So God starts out with a brand new pitcher full of mercy and compassion to pour on us. And because of that, our mercy needs to be new every morning. Mm-hmm. We need that refreshing, and we need that newness of his mercy, because let's face it, there are people it's hard to show mercy to. Yeah. And those are the challenging people that we have in our lives, and we all know who they are. And if we don't have God's mercy in our humanness, we don't have enough.
Yeah, I agree. Well, we're going to talk about 3 things that we have to do so that we can wear mercy every single day. Okay, so first things first when it comes to mercy. I think that for us to really understand the beauty of mercy and how God shows us mercy and how we are called to show it to others, we first have to really come to grasp the ugliness of our sin and what it is that we're really being shown mercy from.
And that's hard, because that requires some self-examination. That requires some really hard honesty, because, you know, most of us think we're pretty decent people, and, well, gosh, we know we're not as bad as they are. But when we really stop and think that all sin separates us from God, and, you know, those little white lies are just as offensive to God as somebody else's sin that you may feel like you're doing better than they are. But in reality, all of us deserve death, and that's the harsh truth. But because of our sins, because we fall short, because we do not have perfection, and God cannot tolerate that sin in us, And he had to provide a way to forgive and still be holy, which is why Jesus came. But that's really hard, and really takes some time to examine yourself and say, yes, I'm forgiven now, but I was guilty. I deserved something that I did not get.
I want to read you this quote from Rick Warren, and then I want to ask you your reaction to that after
Okay.
you hear this. So, God's mercy to us is the motivation for showing mercy to others. Remember, you will never be asked to forgive someone else more than God has forgiven you.
That's kind of hard to swallow at first, because I'm sure we can all think of things that maybe have happened to us, or things that people have done or said to us that I would never do that, and maybe we haven't, but I don't think he's talking about the specific sin. I think he's talking about the degree of forgiveness and mercy required.
Yeah. You cannot fully extend mercy to someone else without fully experiencing mercy yourself. And so if you find yourself really, really struggling to be merciful, and if you find yourself really struggling to show mercy, especially to those closest to you, friends, family, spouse, children, co-workers, if you struggle in that area, then you've got to go back to square one. You've got to go back to the basics, and you've got to sit there for a few minutes and just remember and recall what he has saved you from, the mercy he has shown to you. We have got to have a clear picture of that consistently so that we can continuously reflect that clear picture into the world.
And I think the key to that is we've got to remember what that moment of mercy feels like. When you know you are guilty, and you know you deserve whatever's coming, and it's not going to be pleasant. And this reminds me of a dream I had at a point when I was really, really struggling in my relationship with God. All rules and regulations and no relationship. And I dreamed about being hunted by this big crowd, like the scene out of Frankenstein where they have torches and dogs and they're coming after you. And I was just frantic to get away because I knew that they were going to kill me. And I was racing around trying to find help and trying to find some place to get away. And there was this big house, and I thought, surely if I can get there. Well, the house was surrounded by these big tall gates. There was no way I could get in. I couldn't climb over. There was no way to get under. And I was looking for just some little hole in that gate that I could get under to be safe. And instead, the people who lived there came and threw it wide open and brought me in and embraced me and closed the gates. And I've always known that was God giving me that picture of what grace and mercy are all about. When we're just desperate to find a hole to fall into, to get away from our guilt and our shame and our sin, and instead God throws open the floodgates and says, this is what I have for you.
Come on in. You've got to spend some time reflecting on that. Because until you spend some time reflecting on what God has done for you, it's really hard to do the second thing. And the second thing is to realize and to understand that we are called to be mirrors of mercy. We are called to reflect his love, his grace, his goodness, and his mercy. To those people that are in our circle of influence, those people that we impact every single day, that nobody's perfect. They're going to wrong us. They're going to hurt our feelings. They're going to say things that make us upset. They're going to mess up. They're going to need forgiveness. You can't mirror mercy without just being humbled by that mercy.
And the other thing is, going back to the story in Exodus, God showed mercy. They didn't ask for it. They didn't even think they needed it.
Yeah.
But God showed it anyway. And sometimes that's really hard for us to show that mercy, to show that kindness, forgiveness, whatever's required in that situation, when that person may not even think that they were in the wrong, or that they need to be shown mercy because they're not wrong, you are. And for us to take that humble approach to show them mercy anyway is truly being like God.
Right. That's so true. I'm reading a book right now called The Prodigal God by Timothy Keller. And it's a great book. It's a story of the prodigal son, and it's just an amazing, amazing look. Kind of changes your perspective on that, that parable. But one of the things that he says in this book is mercy and forgiveness must be free and unmerited to the wrongdoer. If the wrongdoer has to do something to merit it, then it isn't mercy.
That's right.
So if I wrong you, and then I have to come to you and apologize or try to make amends or make penance, you're not showing me mercy, you're showing me forgiveness.
Right.
But if I've wronged you and I go about my merry way, not realizing that I've hurt your feelings, and you choose to extend mercy to me, then it's mercy.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's interesting too, the whole justice versus mercy thing, because, you know, especially as Americans, we're so caught up with justice, and this is, you know, you were wrong and you need to pay for this, and it's funny because when we're wronged, we scream for justice. But when we are wrong, we beg for mercy. And both of those are important to God. But we have to understand what God is calling us to do with both of those. And I love this verse in Micah 6. It's verse 8. And Micah, the Lord has just been speaking through the prophet Micah and basically taking Israel to task for all of these things, the ways they've turned away from him. And Micah cries out, you know, how can I approach God? It's not enough if I were to bring him 10,000 head of oxen or 10,000 rivers of oil. What does God want from me? And then the answer is, he has shown you, O man, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. Notice, we are to act justly. We are to behave it justly in a just manner. But we are to love mercy and show mercy. Our actions have to be just, but we have to love mercy. And I think that means also looking for opportunities to show mercy instead of waiting to be smacked upside the head that we didn't show mercy.
Right, that's so true. That's so true. So the first two are kind of those self pieces, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've got to know where we've come from, and we've got to know what we're called to reflect.
Right.
The third piece is critical, and it's crucial. And without it, I think it's impossible for us to wear mercy every single day underneath everything else that we're called to put on. And so to really help you understand this, Sarah and I have come up with a really neat visual. So we're going to show this to you, and I really hope that this sinks in. Okay, so we're talking about the very last thing that we have to have in order to be able to put mercy on every single day. And this is where Exodus 16 becomes so applicable to what we're talking about today, because you and I talked about how mercy was in the manna, but mercy is also just like the manna, and that God has to give us that every single day in order for us to be able to reflect it to those that we're called to reflect it to, which means that we have to go to him and we have to spend time with him. Unlike the story in Exodus, he's not just going to pour it out. You actually have to be in proximity in order to receive it. If the Israelites would have, scattered and searched for food, the manna would have rotted right there in front of them while they were being provided for. So we have to stay close to him in order to get what we need to show that every single day.
And just like the manna, where God only gave them enough for a single day, except on the day he told them to gather twice as much for the Sabbath, we have to stay close to God every day, because in our humanness, our mercy runs out fast.
Yeah.
And if we're not connected to the source of that, if we're not going to God for the manna of mercy every single day, we're going to run out.
Exactly. He's only going to give us enough, like you said. Sometimes not even to make it through the whole day. Sometimes it's to make it through a situation or a meeting. We've got to consistently be plugging ourselves back into him so that we have that to pour out on everybody else. So I want you to show this as we go along here, because Sarah's got a watering can, okay? And this is going to kind of represent us and what we're called to do. And it's filled with water, right? Okay, each one of these plants, okay, we've got your coworkers, your friends, we've got neighbors, your family, and even your children. These are people that are often in that inner circle, often in that inner sphere of influence that we talk about at LeadHer all the time, that we impact people every day. And these represent typically the people we impact on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
So you've got your water. You're going to pour out mercy on each and every single one of these people. And the thing is, these titles can change for everybody. So, somebody might say, well, I don't have coworkers, I'm not working, okay? Well, then you can apply something else that works there. But we've all got different groups that we interact with regularly. And I think it's so important. And she's got enough. She's got enough to keep going, to be able to deal with each and every single one of the problems, the stresses, the different things that arise.
This one's not looking so good.
But the problem often is, for a lot of us as busy moms, a lot of times this can be our children, or it can be a spouse, or it can be a friend, or whoever this is in your life that often
Gets left out.
they don't often get to see your mercy a lot of times, because by the time you get to them at the end of the day, you are tapped out and you are done. And you are finished, and you are cranky, and you are frustrated, and bless their little hearts, their plants just look a little wilted.
And even in the midst of this, there's little shoots trying to come up, but if it doesn't get watered, those little shoots aren't going to go anywhere.
Exactly. And so you might have ran out in here, but you can still, even in the midst of your day, if you know that you've had a really hard day and you're going home, take 5 minutes, take 10 minutes, and get filled back up again so that you can still pour out mercy. And you're not pouring out exhaustion, and you're not pouring out frustration, and you're not pouring out anger and everything else, and you're not pouring all this out on them.
And a really good concrete way to do that, I sometimes I have trouble disengaging from the me at work and the me at home. And my husband is fond of saying, whoa, you're still in work mode, stop right there. One of the things that helps me the most is to stop and take that 5 minutes when I pull in the driveway. And before I get out of the car, before I do anything, I stop and I pray to God and I thank Him for my family. I thank Him for each member of my family. I thank Him for my home, no matter what state it's going to be in when I walk in the door.
Exactly.
I'm thankful for it. I'm thankful to be loved, to be able to show His mercy, to be able to be that reflection of Him, because I don't know what situation I'm walking into with, the animals we have, or the kids had a bad day, or, dad has to work late. But if I stop and thank God for all of those things that I'm getting ready to walk into, no matter what state they're in when I get there, it's a whole lot easier because I've connected with Him through thankfulness.
Right. You're cultivating a mindset of mercy before you even walk in the door. And I think that's an amazing thing to challenge. That's a practical way to deal with that. And for some of us, that's walking into home. For some of us, maybe that's just walking into work. Maybe it's walking into a meeting. Maybe it's, running into a neighbor at the mailbox and you just need to say a quick, okay, help. That kind of thing. Whatever that situation is for you, He's going to provide it if you ask for it.
Absolutely.
Jeremiah 29:13 tells us if we wholeheartedly seek after Him, we will find Him, and He will be there, and He will give us what we need. And this month, what we need and what we need to work on is that mercy piece.
And when we do connect with Him, we don't run out. And this poor little thing that is all straggly and leaning over and in desperate need of some TLC, I guarantee you if I set that in the window by tomorrow afternoon, it's going to look a whole lot better.
Right, exactly. So ladies, this lesson this month, this is the start of a really amazing year that we're going to have in LeadHer Local Chapters all across the United States, because I truly, truly believe, like we said at the beginning, God is ready to do an amazing, amazing movement through His women. But I really believe that for us to really be the catalyst for that movement, it's not our chapters. It's not our meetings. Those are great. Those are great to encourage. The catalyst is mercy. The catalyst is putting that on every single day. Because when you put mercy on every single day, we're talking here about our intimate circle. And we're talking about mercy being a foundational piece that typically only people in your intimate circle are going to see you wearing anyway.
If that.
Right, exactly. So you are talking about people who are going to quickly notice the biggest change in you. When you start showing mercy to those that God has intimately called you to lead, intimately called to love and to shepherd and to grow,
It changes everything.
it does.
Mercy changes everything.
It does. It's going to change you, and by you changing, it's going to change them. So here's your challenge this month. We're going to do something a little different. We're going to do something kind of tactile this month. Each one of your coordinators are now going to give you guys some red plastic cups. And when you guys get these, here's what I want you to do first. First, you're going to take some permanent markers. And what are they going to write on those cups?
They're going to write on those cups people that they have difficulty showing mercy to. It may be one of those extended relatives that you had to entertain over the holidays you weren't real thrilled to see. It may be a coworker or a boss or somebody in your neighborhood that just always rubs you the wrong way. But you know who they are. There are people that, you know, we sometimes refer to them as EGR people, extra grace required. Write them on that cup.
That's great. Okay, so you're going to write them down. So you tactile, you visually have something to see to remind you who you need to focus on showing mercy to. The next thing that you're going to do is you guys are going to do some planting. You're actually going to plant some seeds that we've sent to your coordinators. And you're going to take these cups with your seeds home. And just like we've watered these plants here with mercy,
God's mercy.
God's mercy. We've used this water kind of to symbolize his mercy. I'm going to challenge you guys to do the same thing. Water that plant every single day. Take care of it. Put it in a place where it's getting sunlight, S-O-N light. And it's going to be healthy. It's going to grow. It's going to be able to be nurtured and taken care of because you're showing it mercy. I want that to not just be this little plant that you're growing, but really it's a symbol. And it's a reminder for all of us that as we pour into those people, they're going to grow. They're going to bloom, and they're going to start to develop. And so are we.
And let that be a reminder as you water your seed and you see those names to pray for those people every day as you're watering that seed.
Yeah, definitely. So I hope that we see pictures. I want to see
Yes.
little red cups with names all over them, and hopefully soon flowers coming out of the top. I want to see those littering Facebook and post those. Tell us how we can be praying for you guys as you go through this, because this is a challenge that you have to get. You have to get the concept of mercy. You got to have your underwear on before we can put everything else on.
And you got to
because-
change it every day.
Because it's incredible. That's very true. It's incredibly important. And this is really the start of a completely new year, a completely new focus, and a completely new you
Yes.
as you start to follow God in a new, radically different way.
Amen.
All right. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next month. Good luck showing mercy.